If you physically cringe when the music stops, or if you feel a sudden wave of panic when your phone battery dies, leaving you in absolute silence, you are not alone. In fact, your brain might actually think you are in immediate danger. We live in a world that celebrates noise. But have you ever wondered why the absence of sound feels so incredibly threatening to your nervous system?
From the moment we wake up until we collapse into bed, we are bathed in a constant stream of stimulation. Podcasts, playlists, notifications, traffic, the hum of the refrigerator, the chatter of the television. We treat silence like a void that must be filled at all costs. But this isn't just a habit, it's a physiological response that has been hardwired into us for survival.
When the noise stops, something uneasy bubbles up from the depths of your stomach. It's not just boredom, it's a primal alert signal. To understand why silence feels like a threat, we have to look far beyond our modern apartments and smartphones. We need to travel back to a time when silence didn't mean peace. It meant a predator was stalking you.
Evolutionary psychology teaches us that our brains haven't updated their software in about 50,000 years. We are essentially running Stone Age operating systems in a digital world. In the ancestral environment, the savanna or the jungle was never truly quiet. There was always the background hum of insects, birds, wind, and rustling leaves.
For our ancestors, continuous background noise was a safety signal. The chirping of crickets and the calls of birds meant that everything was normal. The ecosystem was undisturbed. As long as the jungle was singing, the human could relax, gather food, and rest. Noise equaled safety. But what happened when a predator, a lion or a leopard, entered the clearing? The birds stopped singing. The insects went quiet. The jungle held its breath. Sudden silence was the loudest alarm bell nature possessed. It screamed, "Something is wrong. Something is hunting you." Silence was the sound of an impending attack.
Fast forward to today. You are sitting in your living room and the power goes out, or your Wi-Fi disconnects. The hum stops. Your brain, still wired for the savanna, interprets this sudden lack of stimulation as a threat. It dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. You aren't afraid of the quiet room. Your biology is afraid of the invisible predator.
But there is a second layer to this problem. It's not just fear, it's addiction. Our modern environment has hijacked our reward pathways. We have trained our brains to expect a constant drip feed of dopamine. Every notification, every song change, every scroll is a micro-reward that keeps the brain engaged and distracted from reality.
We have pathologized boredom. In a dopamine-saturated world, the neutral state of simply being feels painful. It feels like withdrawal. When you remove the noise, you remove the dopamine hits. Your brain starts screaming for stimulation, not because it needs it to survive, but because it needs it to maintain the high it has become accustomed to.
Neuroscience gives us a name for what happens when we stop doing tasks, the default mode network, or DMN. This is the network in your brain that activates when you are not focused on the outside world. It is the seat of self-reflection, memory, and projecting into the future. But for many, the DMN is a scary place to visit. Why is the default mode network so uncomfortable? Because that's where your unresolved thoughts live. The noise of daily life acts as a numbing agent, a buffer that keeps you from hearing the thoughts you've been running from. Fears about your career, regrets about relationships, questions about your purpose, they all wait for you in the silence.
We use noise as emotional anesthesia. As long as the podcast is playing, you don't have to think about your loneliness. As long as the music is loud,
You don't have to process your grief. We are a generation that is terrified of our own internal monologue, so we drown it out with external dialogue.
But this constant evasion comes at a steep price. By blocking out the silence, we block out our ability to process emotions. It leads to a state of chronic low-level anxiety. You are never fully relaxed, never fully present, and never fully processed. You become a vessel for information consumption rather than a creator of your own life. Furthermore, silence is the incubator of creativity. History's greatest minds, thinkers, artists, inventors, all understood the necessity of solitude. Deep insights don't come when you are scrolling through 15-second videos. They bubble up from the quiet depths of the mind, requiring patience and stillness to surface.
Physiologically, constant noise pollution keeps your cortisol levels elevated. Your heart rate variability drops. Your sleep quality suffers because your brain has forgotten how to wind down. You are keeping your body in a state of fight or flight simply by refusing to unplug. You are exhausting your biology to avoid your psychology.
So, how do we break this cycle? How do we convince our evolutionary brain that silence is not a predator, but a sanctuary? It starts with voluntary exposure. Just like any fear, the fear of silence must be faced gradually. You cannot go from sensory overload to a 10-day silent retreat without crashing.
Start by microdosing silence. 5 minutes in the morning with your coffee. No phone, no news, no music. Just you and the sensory experience of the morning. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your hand will twitch toward your pocket. Your brain will scan for threats. Acknowledge that feeling, but don't act on it.
You must cognitively reframe the experience. When the anxiety hits, tell yourself, I am not being hunted. I am safe. This feeling is just my dopamine receptors resetting. By labeling the emotion, you take away its power. You turn a predator response into a healing process. Use nature as a bridge. Natural silence is rarely absolute silence. It is the sound of wind, water, and life. This is the frequency our brains evolve to find soothing. If absolute silence is too harsh, start with the sounds of nature. It satisfies the primal part of your brain that needs to hear the environment, while calming the modern part that needs a break. Try the silent commute. Drive to work or take the train without plugging in. Use this transitional time to let your mind wander. Let the thoughts come up. Some will be brilliant, some will be garbage, and some will be difficult. But let them flow through you rather than damming them up with distraction. As you practice this, you will notice something profound happening to your focus. When you stop fragmenting your attention with constant noise, your ability to do deep work skyrockets. You reclaim your cognitive bandwidth. The task at hand becomes enough. You stop needing the artificial sweetener of entertainment to get through your day. You will also find that your emotional resilience improves. When you give yourself silence, you process micro-stresses throughout the day instead of letting them accumulate into a breakdown. You become the observer of your thoughts, not the victim of them. You start to know yourself again.
Remember, boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the gateway to brilliance. It is the waiting room for ideas. If you abort the process every time you feel bored, you never get to the breakthrough. You must be willing to sit in the waiting room if you want to meet the muse.
Science backs this up. Studies have shown that silence can actually stimulate the growth of new cells in the hippocampus, the region of the brain associated with memory, emotion, and learning. By embracing silence, you are literally physically rebuilding your brain to be stronger, sharper, and more resilient.
Silence also deepens your connection with others. When you are comfortable with your own silence, you become a better listener. You stop listening just to respond and start listening to understand. You become present in your relationships, which is the greatest gift you can offer anyone.
Over time, the silence that once felt like a threat becomes a luxury. It becomes your sanctuary. You stop feeling the phantom vibration in your pocket. You stop fearing the quiet moments in a conversation. You realize that you don't need constant noise to feel alive. In fact, you feel more alive without it.
We cannot change our evolutionary history. We will always have that primitive part of our brain that scans for lions in the quiet. But we can choose whether to listen to it. We can choose to override the outdated alarm system and recognize that in the modern world, silence is not danger, it is power.
So, here is my challenge to you. Today, find 20 minutes of deliberate silence. No phone, no music, no talking. Just you and your existence. It will be hard. It will be loud inside your head. But stay with it. Let the sediment settle.
Because when the sediment settles, the water becomes clear. And in that clarity, you will find the answers you have been looking for, the peace you have been chasing, and the version of yourself that has been waiting patiently beneath the noise.
Don't let the fear of the predator keep you running. Stop, listen, and reclaim the power of your own mind. Because in a world that never shuts up, silence is the ultimate act of rebellion.